being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just want to see anyone else. Piss off.
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian. So,
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. P&G now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
I'm looking at myself in that clip, and I see slightly chubbier and decidedly less steel wool on this face. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Corona TV. I am live at a nudist colony, so I'm on location. Just be prepared for a lot more skin because we're going to be exposed today. We're going to expose ourselves, maybe literally and figuratively, and we'll see whether that spikes or tanks our numbers. Glenn says, I thought today was on the YouTube and not Facebook. And Steve Garfield says, hi, Steve from the car, as opposed to Steve from stevegarfield.com. Well, Glenn, this is the week where you have been warned. This is the week where today we are still on Facebook, but as of next week, I'm going to try one full week of Adam saying cannot unsee. No, trust me, it's gonna get worse. Stephen Rubin is here. My mom is here. Seth Sparks says I'm being a good boy and watching on YouTube. Yes, next week, everybody flock to YouTube. This is where I want to build this little tribe, this little community. So thank you for complying. And thank you for anyone who has gone out and bought my new cryptocurrency, bought some Jaffe. Remember, you don't have to give it to me, although, you know, somebody's got to pay the real bills with fake money. I'm just kidding. With cryptocurrency. I'm loving this little experiment, my own branded currency. You can buy it, you can hold it, you can donate it, you can give it, and in exchange, I might be sharing some experiences with you, like a signed copy of my book, a 5-minute promo interview for you where I would get to interview you and you can use that any way you want, or, and I will supersize this, I'm going to give away one of these every week, a 30-minute mentoring, coaching, or brainstorm session. It only costs you 100 Jaffes, and it is volatile. So it could be anywhere between $41 and $32. You might want to wait for the right time to get the session, but have a little bit of fun. Let's have fun together and co-create or curate what I believe is a very exciting moment in our lives, which is the monetization for creators everywhere, the micro monetization for creators everywhere. So enough about that. Today is March 4th. Today is Courageous Followers Day, and I'm not really sure what that means, but I love, sometimes I don't even want to know what it means. What do you think Courageous Followers Day? Does it mean you should follow someone on social media that you ordinarily wouldn't have followed? I'm not really sure, but just be courageous if you are a follower. We always talk about leadership. Maybe there's something interesting about being a follower as well, that it isn't maybe only a subservient type of thing, that you can actually be brave and courageous in terms of choosing who or whom you align yourself with. Maybe that is the interpretation about what it is to be a courageous follower. Well, tomorrow we have our community show. And speaking of people that are courageous, we've got Leslie Laredo, the sales lady, as she calls herself, Mr. Tom Morris, who has just, I believe, figured out how to comment on YouTube. He will be with us tomorrow. Nick Westergaard, what a smart guy. Thoroughly enjoyed having him on my show. And finally, Mr. Kuda Biza, the founder of a mission-based cookie company, not the kind that Google doesn't like, but the real kind, called None-Believable. And that is what we have to look forward to this Friday. Next week, we've got some amazing guests. Del Leonard-Jones, Keith Reynolds Jennings, Liz Plank, the author of, well, you know, I'll let you guys figure that out yourself. Maybe Joey Dumont, if he's watching, will tell us who Liz Plank is and what she is the author of. I'll tell you, I'll let you out your misery. For the love of men, very excited for her to come in. And then Julia McCoy will be coming in on Thursday. Julia grew up and escaped a cult. And believe it or not, she's the second person to be on the show that, in fact, escaped a cult. Lisa Cohn as well, who was on the show. She's going to tell her story and what she's up to right now. And then finally, next week's show, Trisha Ben, David Ormano, he's going to kill me for showing that photo of him, Brian Kramer, and Christina Di Giacomo, an amazing philosopher, will be on the show. So a lot to look forward to. But right now, all you got to do is sit back and enjoy a little bit of Tracy Lovatt. She is the founder and CEO of Batten & Company. And we've had the most delightful chat in the background, including when exactly on the show we want to join the nudist colony together. So I'm getting a bit tongue-tied even at the thought of it. But, you know, we'll give you a few minutes to, clean your glasses. Let's say happy birthday to Matt Dickman, to Darren Herman, to Jen Samples, the wonderful, incredible Jen Samples, and on LinkedIn, Beth Ann Eason, Andrew Montague, and Gianluca Gerard. Hope you guys are well and having a great day. Well, let's get into our seated soliloquy. And today, the seated soliloquy is called Attention Ponzi Schemes. Today was the 1-year anniversary of You Are the Media. Now, I have to say big congratulations to previous guest on Corona TV, Mark Masters, on a life-changing pivot from in-person lunches, which is what You Are the Media was, to this new dynamic and vibrant hybrid platform. The guest today was my brother from another mother, Mitch Joel, and in his words of wisdom, he uttered this delicious phrase, which I just simply had to expand on in my monologue: attention Ponzi schemes. The context of his response to a question about evaluating new platforms like Clubhouse, and to the extent first mover advantage, is critical to what becomes a chaotic land grab. In some respects, it's like a new series on broadcast television these days. Are you going to invest your precious and discretionary time only to be disappointed when it gets cancelled, or will you wait until it is proven and then binge watch to your heart's content? Perhaps this is at the core of why Netflix works and traditional television does not at a scripted level. Clubhouse is a great test case because it has created superstars, almost like overnight superstars, or what I call web celebrities, in next to no time. At the same time, for every talented newcomer is 3 wolves in sheep's clothing, lurking and ready to pounce with their get-rich-quick schemes. As of writing this piece, I have between 1,500 and 1,600 followers on Clubhouse. Follow me, I'm Jaffe Juice on Clubhouse. Now, while that might impress you, if you're holding me up to, I don't know, the business gypsy, who is currently moderating a room called Instagram for Business Tips and Trick with 7,500 followers, then clearly I have some hustling to do. Where do you fit into this pyramid? How should you evaluate and ultimately sort the wheat from the chaff? I have 3 pieces of advice. Number 1, From a business perspective, look at people's credentials coming into a new medium or platform. Put bluntly, did they exist before? Similarly, will they exist when the frenzied mob moves on to the next big thing? This is my 6-year-olds playing soccer analogy, all bunched up and nowhere to go. And just note, this does not apply what I've just said to talent and creators. These scenarios are unbelievable arenas for being discovered. Number 2, to understand how to extract value from the platform is to strategically tie it into your existing business. For me, it's simple. Am I growing Corona TV? Period. Number 3, that said, don't discount the immeasurable benefit of the learnings that come out of this Wild West reality show. Ponzi or no Ponzi, pay close attention. Take copious notes and be ready to rinse and repeat when the next big thing comes along, because if we've learned anything, it will. Well, I always say I'm interested in what my guest has to say, and I really am interested in what my guest has to say in terms of evaluating new platforms, new ideas, new innovations. Tracy is the founder and CEO of Batten & Company, a strategy company that operates at the intersection of business, brand, and culture, and is emotionally intelligent and often brave enough to tell you what we know you don't want to hear, but you must nonetheless. Now, I have a question to ask her. Tracy, are we talking about you or the company or both when it comes to this emotional intelligence, and it's going to call it like it is and tell you as it is because you need to hear it?
I'd like to think it was both. It's definitely in the company. Sometimes it's in me. It depends on how much sleep I've had the night before, but I'd like to think it was both. I remember a few years ago after we started the company, I had an anthropologist who worked for me full time, which was both the most invigorating and exhausting of experiences. He was an academic. Well, he still is an academic, and his insight and his thinking was fascinating and fantastic, and took a long time to kind of unravel and figure out. And people hated me in the company for having him on staff because he confused everybody. But I remember when he left and he went back to Fordham to lecture, go write some more books, he said to me, remember one thing about this company. Remember that it's intuitive, and remember that it's a female company. I didn't really understand what he meant, but what he meant was intuitive. And he felt as an anthropologist that we were more intuitive. So we've tried to do that. And I think that, yeah, we do tell people things they don't want to hear. I did it this morning, Joseph. I told some clients some stuff they didn't want to hear. So.
And how did they take it?
Well, they're meeting me again later, so we'll see if they pay the next invoice. But
well, I think that probably talks as well, obviously, to the culture, right? Which is the kinds of companies and the kinds of clients and brands that you attract, or that are, attracted to you. In the sense that, look, it's the opposite of buyer beware. It's being able to work with the right mindset. And you spoke about your company being a female company. I love that idea. In many languages, words are either male or female. And in this particular case, literally, there can be a company of females and female founders. But in this case, a company that embodies female values and beliefs. I just think that's a beautiful concept. And in the case of, what was the word used? Was it intuitive? Was that the word?
Yeah, I mean, that was his perspective. And I think that, that's why we talk about the sort of intersection of culture and the intersection of business and the intersection of where a brand comes in. And I think that intersection of the culture piece is very interesting. So very often, I think what we find is that people are looking at the P&L, they're figuring out what they've got to do, they're figuring out how much money they need to make, and they've got incremental plans to be able to get there. Meanwhile, the brand is doing what it's doing in terms of its equity, but culture. This year is one of those examples, right? So how could we have changed things as quickly as we've changed things? And what does that mean going forward? So one of the things that I had said to you that I'm really interested in is the notion of where do we go when these clouds of COVID start to lift and we can see some of this stuff in the rearview mirror like everybody else? So where do we go as leaders? Where do we go with our companies? How do we help people out of that? And are we ready to hear some of the things that maybe people want to tell us about the way that they were working in the past and don't really want to work in the future? So we're really going to be able to listen to that, and we're really going to be able to make the change that I think we need to make.
One of the no, go for it.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think you talk about the female thing, I think for the longest period of time that we've kind of worked in this, that the commercial world has existed in this sort of 1950s, somewhat patriarchal version of how we're supposed to show up on a daily basis. And I'm really talking about the kind of, the corporate culture of the glistening towers. And that's meant that we all get up at the same time every day. We all shove ourselves onto a train at the same time, or we sit on the 405 in LA. We dress in a certain way, we show up in a certain way, and then we kind of wind that down at the end of the day. And that's breaking apart, and the pandemic has broken that apart completely. So that notion has always seemed to me to be a total hangover from a time when we didn't have the technology and the capability, even before the pandemic started. So I think we're really at a crossroads around that now. I think it's going to be really interesting. There's a big difference between a big delta in the data around how people feel, how employees feel, and how companies feel. So if you look at that delta, so PwC, I think, was one of the last studies that I read. They asked people what they wanted to do. What they want to do is work 3 days a week, roughly remotely. The other way around, employers believe that they need to be in the office for at least 3 days a week. So immediately we have a kind of difference of opinion, a difference of what we want and what we think will be effective and work for us.
Right now,
you just followed me for a minute, by the way, which totally freaked me out because I was enjoying that.
I mean, I can bring us back to the nudist colony as well.
Yeah.
But this version of this is not strip poker. This is strip interviewing as well. Every wrong answer. Okay, we're not gonna do that. I definitely am looking at some of the comments, basically, talking about where is it? Mr. Adam Zand, he said cannot unsee. I'm going back to that as well. You won't have to. It's theater of the mind. But I'm gonna butcher this quote. But the idea is things take, painfully long and take so long to eventually change, and then it happens in an instant, right? It's that quote about this slowness and how painfully slow, and then overnight it's forever changed. I mean, even the example of the one I was using the other day is not being able to take photography or videography, photos and videos at a concert. You could not bring in a camera that was so big you couldn't hide the camera, and then the iPhone comes along and they still would come and tap you on the shoulder if you were videotaping. They still kind of do, but then they just, the genie was out the bottle, and it was forever changed. And it's interesting because what you're doing is you're actually bringing it back to this Mad Men-esque, if we think about marketing and advertising, and you're saying every aspect of this business culture and society is this patriarchal, archaic, outdated aspect, and it's just changing radically. I mean, my son is a senior in high school, and they go to school 4 days, 3 days a week. Why? Because one day everyone is at home and they're cleaning and disinfecting, and then just in order to go back to school at 75% capacity, they have to kind of mix different cohorts. But at some point, why do you have to go to school 5 days a week? What would happen if that one day, if one of those 5 days, you did something else? So maybe it was group work or case work or community work. Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-hour work week. It's all coming to a head right now, isn't it?
I think it has. I think it's completely exploded. And I think it's going to be very interesting to to look at and to help companies figure out how they do that. So do we have an opportunity to stand back and blow it up and really listen to people and look at that data? And I don't think I'm not one of those people who believes that it's all over, we're never going back to the office again, neither should we. I think that it very much depends on circumstances that people find themselves in individually. I'm lucky. I'm sitting in a spare room at my house, apart from the dog coming in every now and again. I'm not homeschooling children. I'm too old for that. So I'm not sitting in a situation that's driving me nuts on a daily basis. So for me, there are advantages of working like this, and there are disadvantages. And that's different for everyone that you talk to. So I think this is going to take intuition and listening and really thinking about how do you maintain. I mean, most companies, a lot of companies that I've talked to at least, have at least maintained, if not driven up productivity while we've been working under the most difficult of circumstances, emotionally, physically, spiritually difficult. So there's that piece of it. And I think this notion that we really have a chance to allow people to bring themselves authentically to what they do, so they don't feel that they have to subscribe to an outdated model, will be good for the world if we can figure out. So, as you said, the pendulum has sort of violently swung. We were forced into that. I mean, we've been sitting, we've been sitting for years and years with this technology that would allow us to do this, but we never have. I spent half my life on a plane. I was talking to somebody about the other day who said, she said, I feel like she's a very successful corporate lawyer. And she said, I feel like now what I do is I have some time, and I'm not wasting all that time that I was wasting before by unnecessarily traveling or getting on a plane. So stress levels have gone down in one way and gone up in another way.
I have a theory that just popped into my mind right now, and it's the context of this was, I was saying, why was I ever excited to get on a plane? What was it the overcooked piece of fish on my plate? Was it the warm, bubbleless champagne in the plastic glass that I got? Was it the flat bed, which, by the way, I'm 6'1", that I couldn't quite even, lie flat on with a din? And I mean, it couldn't have been that. And that was business class. That was the upgrade that I'd finally got. And I think, if anything, I guess my theory is that it was escape. It was escape from, and I'm not saying this for me, but I'm saying in general, it was escape from the family, from the home, from the day to day. It was escape from the office and your boss or the rat race. And I'm using some, generalizations and stereotypes, but it was the ability to just be alone. And another thing I said, almost like in a kind of a snarky way, is like, so I could watch my favorite show on this tiny screen when I've got this big flat screen at home. But it was the fact that being on a plane was actually not about flying from a destination from A to B. It was just about being alone, being by yourself, and having time to yourself. But surely that is not reason enough to have to get on a plane.
So what's the reason for, I guess that's the thing, right? What's the reason for being in the office, right? What is the reason for everyone getting up at the same time, everyone kind of feeling that they have to subscribe to looking a certain way and being a certain way and working in a certain model because we figured out in the 1950s or the 40s or whatever it was, and we've perpetuated that despite the fact that we have all this technology, despite the fact that we can live differently, despite the fact that we shouldn't be producing carbon emissions as we were. And I know so many of my friends who run companies who would be, I'm flying to Dallas today, I'll be back in the morning, or I'm flying there and back from New York because I'm going to have dinner with a client. Are you crazy? It's like, it's crazy. It's not good for anyone to do that. So why do we go in? Why do we miss that piece of it? So I feel very strongly that we go back in a hybrid way and we listen to what people need. And we think about, so we need community, right? So we need time alone, we need community, we need spaces to work. We can't all work in a separate room in a house because we have children. So I think there's many versions of what it looks like, and we have to listen to all those versions. So I don't believe there's one way of it happening. But I think that the fact that we all subscribe pretty much to one way of working before and nobody really questioned it. I can tell you, I questioned it before the pandemic. It's like, that's not going to happen again. It's like nuts. It is absolutely nuts when you think about it. So we're all going to cram ourselves in to little tubes, metal tubes in the morning. And we're all going to get there at the same time.
I feel like the question you asked, by the way, is what Colin Shaw would call a golden question. You know, or Warren Berger might call a beautiful question. Both of them were on the show previously in the last year, because and the only thing that popped into my head was compliance. It was like roll call. It's proving that you actually checked in and checked out, that there isn't really another reason other than being able to say, you know, are the minions in their cubes, you know, attached to their cubes. But other than that, productivity wise, collaboration wise, and so I just wanted to throw that out there, and then I'll just show you a few comments coming in and then have you comment on that, Tracy. So let's see. Daron Wesley says we place value in human interaction face to face, regardless of technology. Adam says travel and events allowed us to meet new people, gain new perspectives. The travel part sucked. And he adds, my office space was public libraries, went to over 300 since start of the agency, miss them dearly. Well, let's go and see what Seth said. Seth said, I've kept asking that question during job interviews, and the common answer is so that serendipitous collisions happen, as if you can't manufacture that digitally. And then Tom agrees with Seth. He says, I've had plenty of serendipity right here on Zoom and other virtual platforms. I mean, how much serendipity does one person need? So Tracy, what do you think about all of that and serendipitous collisions?
I think we should tell CEOs who are about to make those decisions that what they should do is not make those decisions unilaterally. They should work to lose the sucky bits, right? So lose the sucky. And I don't buy, it was interesting when I looked at the PwC thing, I don't buy the fact that, and this is what people say, you know, we need to have, everyone needs to be in the office at the same time all the time, because that's what drives corporate culture. My corporate culture is alive and well and doing just fine, thank you. And some of the clients that I've been working with this year, I've never met. Would I like to meet them in person? Of course I would. Do I need to do it in my office? No, I'd be fine doing it over a martini somewhere. I'm good with that. That kind of serendipity I would put in the not serendipitous sucky bit, which means that I have to spend half my day, which by the way, now I can grow tomatoes and I can walk the dog and I can be generally less of a grumpy person because I'm not doing all that stuff any longer. So I think we've got to work really hard and think really deeply about what the opportunity is. And I hope that the minions, right, I'm a minion too, that we're brave enough to say, no, that's not right. It doesn't work like that anymore. Those days are gone. We don't need to do that. And that people can show up in a way that is authentic for them. So I see no reason why that can't happen. I really don't. It's just more difficult.
Right. And I mean, look, Adam says free bagels on Friday is the only reason for office spaces, because you can't get bagels or free bagels, you know, working from home, right, Adam?
I think we can drive. That's driving up the gold belly share price, right? I'll send you bagels, Adam. That's fine.
So there you go, Adam. You just scored free bagels. Please indicate in the comment thread what your favorite type of bagel is. But I love this, and I love this conversation because it forces us, but it inspires us to actually start asking more questions. And I think that's also something that came out when Warren Berger was on the show, that sometimes it's answering a question with another question. The objective of a question is to create and prompt another question. And so you keep curious and you keep asking, and eventually you get closer and closer to the real answer, which might, of course, be another question.
Always.
So that got a little. I got choked up thinking, confusing myself with my meta-ness as well. But I think it's important, this idea of, and that's why I love the fact that Batten, you talk about the word intersection as opposed to interjection. as opposed to, you know, something that I know that you feel very, very strongly about, which is exclamations as well. And that's another, that is a kind of an interjection as well. So just before we continue, I have to ask you these questions about you as we get to know the real, you know, the real Tracy Lovatt. What is the deal? That's why I asked you. I was looking at this point and I was like, do you have a book? Because this is what I read, right? I can't bear exclamation marks. There is really no excuse in my book. I said, she has a book. So tell me about what is this aversion to the exclamation point?
Why do I hate it? It's
Yeah.
massively, because they're massively lazy things. Massively lazy in my book. So so in my book, which you took literally, maybe that should be that'll be the book, Joseph. I'll call it that. I just,
with lots of exclamation points, right?
Write the thing in the way, say the thing in a way with emotion, right? With power of language in a way that doesn't require you to shove an exclamation mark at the end of it, or worse, even 5 of the, everyone who works with me on it, don't put that in a thing that you're sending to her, because we shouldn't need to say it. It shouldn't need to be, and then I whack you around the head in case you didn't get what I said before. So bring emotion, bring language, bring the power of that, and then you won't need those things at the end. It's not an aversion to using the ink on the printer. I don't care for them.
So Tom says, yes, it's lazy. I'm lazy, but enthusiastically so, exclamation point. But I think there's something interesting there, which is, can you make your point without having to use an exclamation point, without having to like emphasize, without having to bold, without having to underline? Is it actually an insecure piece of punctuation? And that is a transferred epithet, by the way.
I would tell you, I think that's the case. I think that we have, we were talking about the sort of the conformity of what I would consider the sort of since the 1950s hangover, where we're all working in a certain way. I know I'm exaggerating to prove a point, but the other piece of that, I think, is that, we've become bound by the dreaded PowerPoint, for example. So we must make a logical presentation where we go through slides that look like this, and your story must, and you must only have so many words on a page, etc. So we found that a pattern when we're trying to unravel complicated stories. And I said to you before, I'm a massive uncomplicator of things. I don't like the complex piece of it. I want to get to the reason why, and then we can all look at it. It's like the bum that's behind you. It's like, that's what I can see right now. That's the point, right? That's what she's doing in a nudist colony. So that construct that doesn't allow us to get over and above. And you said before, I love this notion of intersections, which is things don't exist singularly on a page. They exist consecutively, they exist organically. And if you move them around, it's like that thing in the Times where you fill in the words every day. You spin the wheel, you see the letters differently, it looks different. And I think there's magic in those intersections. So we always talk about pull the lens up, go up, 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 people. So then you can look down on it and you can say, does it make sense? What's happening in those intersections? Where's the magical piece that I missed before? And how can I put that together differently? So it's a more interesting way of looking at the world and thinking about the world. It's scarier too, by the way, because that's where you find the stuff that you don't really want to find. It's like, oh, it was better when I didn't know that was happening in my business.
Well, there are 2 beautiful points. The one is the idea of intersections, and then the other one is this idea of uncomplicating, and being able to not dumb down. Right? I often say simple but not simplistic, complex but not complicated. So much of our language, so much of our culture is just creating unnecessary complications or even in this case complexity. But the intersection is beautiful because these are moments of truth. It's when cultures, when creeds, when ethnicities, when diversity, when perspectives, when disagreement, it's the combination of, but it is the exact, in South Africa there is a place called Cape Point, where the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean supposedly come together, and people go there and they're like, I think that's the point. But like, there's magic in not the Venn diagram, right? Not the actual middle ground, but just the moment at which two become one.
I agree, and I think that, you know, this sort of this logical linearity that is comfortable, potentially, or maybe comfortable, or we're trained to think about, is not where the magic happens. Magic happens at intersections. Magic happens when it's organic. Magic happens when you can see the whole picture. And it can be a scary place to go. I said to you, I think very often, you know, we talk to clients about things that they don't necessarily want to have to deal with, but they should deal with. And uncomplicating that and getting to the root of what's really going on, and not coming into any of those conversations assuming the problem is here. I can tell you all my conversations, almost all my conversations with companies start with, well, we think, here's the thing, this is what's happening. So it's digging in and trying to find out why it's happening and putting all of these things together. I hate PowerPoint, hate it. And I hate it because it hides things. And I hate it because I can't remember. So give me a 40-page presentation on PowerPoint and you lost me by 4. I can't remember what was happening on number 1. So I have to have it around me. I have to be immersed in it. I have to be able to create those connections and see how they work organically, to think about how one piece over here and the intersection of another piece over here is making a different dynamic and changing things. And often it's people and it's emotional. It's not always, and it can be cultural. It's not always a straight line. I was listening to Young Mi Moon recently, who's a fantastic lecturer at Harvard. And Young Mi was talking about her 7 lessons from the pandemic. Interestingly, I can remember number 1 and number 7, which probably says a lot about the sieve-like nature of my brain. But number 1 was, if we've learned anything, then we've learned that we can't predict anything any longer. So in and of itself, not particularly insightful, but I thought what I found very helpful about that is, if you think about how that makes you behave as a corporation, as a human being, which is, I don't know. It's okay not to know. It's all right to be in some form of liminality for a while. But I think corporate culture teaches us that that's not the case. So giving people the opportunity to do that and to dream a little bit, I find that very difficult in PowerPoint. Interestingly, number 8, just because I like number 8 from Young Mi Moon, was all about love. If it's taught us anything, it's taught us to hang on to the things that matter and to love the people. She said, love the people you love hard every day. I love that. I think that's fantastic. Do it hard.
I love point number 8, and you know, for some reason, and you know, look, I've had 214 guests now. Tamsin Webster, I remember something she said when she was on the show. 2 things she said, and one was she spoke about paradoxical thinking, and the other one was about this idea of rethinking wealth. And success not as pie or piece of the pie or expanding the pie, but as a flame. And then a couple of days ago, in a room on Clubhouse, she said, when you look backwards, the past is a straight line. But some reason, whatever she says with me sticks. And then there are other people that say things and it doesn't stick. And I think maybe going, you know, to like connect it back to the topic at hand. We look at insights and we look at even a presentation, you know, like as all you can eat, an all you can eat buffet, where we just eat until we basically kind of get sick, as opposed to being very selective and making sure that there is more space on our plate than not. And I actually feel like it's okay that you took away 1, 7 and then 8. I think that's okay. In a perfect world, the person presenting would have wanted you to take away 1, 7 and maybe 8. But in a more perfect world, they would have just presented 1, 7 and 8 and said, here are the 3 things, as opposed to here are the top 10. But it's going to take time for us to get to, again, being less insecure, where we feel like we have to give you more for you to believe that we have value.
So I run a company that is a consulting company, and I think a lot of consulting companies sort of feel like they're paid by the poundage. It's like, how many, if I don't generate 475 charts, it's like, then how could I possibly justify being paid the fees? How about if I'm paid by the actionability? How about if I change the model? How about if my value is in coming in and leaving as quickly as possible, and leaving no damage and no freaked out corporate executives behind me, but an idea or a notion and something that you can actually grab hold of and you can use and your people can feel? How about they can authentically show up every day? How about we give people permission in a different way? How about we start unlocking some of those things that have held us in for such a long time? And again, my other huge area of passion is around the power of authenticity of people and allowing people to be authentic and bring themselves. And again, that's why I don't like the PowerPoint thing. It's like a whole confining thing, which is this has become our corporate language.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've spoken about this idea of being secure or being secure about being maybe insecure. And I thought this was, something that you sent to me, and I think it's just really so beautifully written, that we are uncovered, will we stay that way? So coming out of this and going through this period of discomfort, or maybe even embracing the discomfort. That's why I chose the nudist colony, because it was connected to this quote, which I think you said this, right? Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Do you know who said that, by the way? You must.
Yeah, you do. I do, and I can't remember. I really can't.
This is
there you go.
Warren.
That's not a good thing in my mind. I mean, I love Warren, but the notion of the naked Warren,
No, I know. Listen,
I can't unsee that, Joseph.
This was, a lot of people still can't unsee me even with clothes on. So let's just call it what it is. But I would love for you to talk to this idea, that we are uncovered. What is it to be uncovered? Is it vulnerability? Is it being able to realize that weakness, in fact, is perhaps strength?
I think it's a combination of things. I think that, in some ways, in a very literal way, the pandemic has meant that for many of us, we have to communicate and exist and live differently, right? So, we're doing this I'm sitting at a house wherever I am, you're sitting where you're in a nudist colony. I'm sorry, I forgot that. So this whole notion that it's like, this is a spare room in the house. I mean, I don't know if that's supposed to be the right corporate setting or not the right corporate. And frankly, I don't care anymore. It seems to be working just fine. But I think that, again, it's part of this sort of, we put on our armor every day. We show up in a certain way every day. And now we've got dogs, children, crisis. When the thing goes down, it doesn't work. I haven't got this. I didn't have a monitor for the longest time. I couldn't even see the stuff. So I think there has been a kind of uncovering in lots of ways. We literally are meeting people. I mean, I've had clients I've known for many, many years, and co-workers I've known for many years. I've never been to their house, and now we're in their bedroom every day. So I think we've sort of begun the process of breaking down some of those things. And I think in a more profound way than that, the notion that we have got children who are running around in the background, and that those things have been sort of pushed to the fore, that we've been forced to, for so many people, take care of kids and be able to work at the same time with two people. I have a co-worker, who has 3 little kids. She and her husband are working every day in the same bedroom. He's a loud Aussie. I know she wants to kill him on a daily basis. We can hear his conversation often more than we can hear hers. So here's the real Rebecca, right? Here's Rebecca's life. Here's a little glimpse into what life is really like. And then I think you start to pull it. I think there's a much more profound notion of what being uncovered is. And I think that's around diversity and equity. And how do you include people? How do you really allow people to be authentic, to really be who they are? And for me, that ties to the notion of there's not going to be one way, or there shouldn't be one way of going back to work and a new normal, but there should be a hybrid piece of it. And I really hope that we can evolve around this notion of inclusion. There was some, again, some very interesting studies have been done around how people feel that they're constantly covering up, right, who they really are. So because they can't do that, they can't really bring their authentic selves to work and to the environment that they're in. And we know that that makes people less effective and less happy. And we've got a mental health epidemic in this country. So we need to do that. So how do we figure out how we really can work at not expecting people to modulate their identities, but actually to bring themselves to work and to bring themselves fully to what they do? And so for me, it's all about how do you start to, not just for the sake of it, I'm not a disruptor because we should just go around disrupting things, but the world's been disrupted in the way that we work. These things we are beginning to uncover it. I thought was interesting when I looked at some of this data is that, unsurprisingly, if you talk to people who are LGBTQ, for example, the last data I looked at, 83% of people in this study said that they feel that they cover themselves up every day, that they're pretending in essence to be something else. 79% of Black people, 66% of white people, unsurprisingly, 45% of straight white men who don't believe that they can really uncover who they actually are. And so I think that it's almost like, for me, the pandemic gives us an opportunity to start to really question these constructs that have been placed for the longest period of time that are not actually very helpful any longer. So why don't we have the hard conversations and start talking about how do we build a different kind of hybrid new normal, if you like, that comes out of this, that actually works for human beings, that actually embraces who we are in every respect. It would be so much more fun to have everybody show up as their real selves. And I don't believe we're in a world any longer where you can only do that face to face. I think we need some of that. I miss that like crazy for sure, but it doesn't have to be face to face from 8:30 in the morning till 6:30, 7 o'clock every night.
One of the things that I've done on my Friday shows, which are I call them community shows, but really I tap into just previous guests, because when I realize I've got over 200 of them, I don't want to just I don't want to just say, well, Tracy, thanks for coming on the show. See you in 10 years time at the next pandemic, God forbid. So like, how do I? Diane's actually going to be on the show. She's coming back on the show. Diane Hessen introduced the two of us. But she's going to be on the show in 2 weeks' time as well. But in these community shows, I do like a little icebreaker. Sometimes it's as frivolous as are you buying or selling? Robin Hood. We did are you buying or selling Pepsi, because they came out with this most ridiculous campaign now with Men, you're always compromising yourselves. You're compromising yourself to your wife, to your boss, whatever. It's time not to compromise. That's why you should have Pepsi, sugar-free. So no, it's crazy. But other times it's just like, hey, listen, if you were, who would play you in a movie? And just even a silly, superficial icebreaker can reveal so much about who you are, or just have everyone participate on an equal footing. And I was thinking to myself, Tracy, that and I don't know, you bring out different thoughts that I haven't had before. And here's one, which is we are still uncomfortable about a child running in the room, and the dog barking. We say, oh no, don't worry about that. That's fine. The CEO of the company, but everyone is cringing about it. And I was thinking to myself, what we should be doing in that situation is using that as a moment to push the pause button and say, you know what, let's just take a pause. Everybody bring in their dogs right now, or everybody bring in their kids. Let's meet everyone's kids if we don't know them already. It should be an opportunity to use that ridiculous moment, of the kid running in or having a temper tantrum, to say, let's all just take off the figurative clothes for a moment. let's all uncover, and then we can put on all of our, guards and armor and keep going. That's the thought I wanted to share with you.
I like it, and I don't, I guess the other thing I would say is, or we don't put them back on, right? Or we leave them there.
Ideally,
it
right.
doesn't matter. So, so my 10-month-old golden doodle's not here, but he sure as hell is, I'm sure he's annoying the crap out of my partner who's on a call in the other room, but it doesn't matter. Do we have to not know that there's a golden? Does it make me less effective? I don't think it does. I think it makes me human. I think it gives me a point of connection with somebody else who's, also having to deal with half the house being
exactly.
So, and at that degree, I was telling my partner earlier today, I had been struggling very hard to articulate something that meant a lot to me, to a client in their business. And I realized that I was thinking about this today, actually, and I realized that one of the things I had done is I had sort of made the mistake of confining myself, which removed my authenticity to a certain way of delivering this presentation. And it didn't work. I didn't communicate effectively, and it was awful. I didn't sleep last night because of it. I'm like, how did we not get that right? How did we not, make it stick? And then I had a very honest conversation this morning, and I just decided that it was just be easier for me just to talk about it and be who I authentically am. And all of a sudden, guess what? They're like, oh, I didn't really realize that, okay, I could have done that in the first place. Why didn't I just do that? Why, and I've been doing it a long time. Why am I still saying I have to do it in a certain way? And if I don't do it in a certain way, then it's not acceptable. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about authenticity and bringing, who you are and a sense of passion and humanity to what you do.
I couldn't agree more, though. And I was thinking we have to, even the word authentic, like you said, who I authentically am, the word authentic is basically like an exclamation point too. Like we need to eradicate the exclamation point and the word authentic, because it just should be, right? I would say probably it sounds like a new Dr. Seuss book, but the authentic exclamation point. But we'll just leave that there. Let's talk about more pressing, in the time we have left. Let's talk about more pressing matters, important things like Peloton customer service, shall we? Because I know one of the things, by the way, and I have to say, Miss Allie Love actually responded to me. So I am such a Peloton booster that you can attack them, but I will fight you on this. But I know that what you wanted to talk about was Peloton, not Peloton the brand, not Peloton the experience, not Peloton the community, but Peloton customer service, or the lack thereof. What's going on with Peloton?
I think it's a really good question, and I'm not gonna attack them, and I would love for them to for them to be listening a bit harder. I think I've been a Peloton person since the early days, so I have prided myself on that, and I have fought the Soul Cycle people off avidly and said no, this is great. So I, like you, am an avid Pelotoner, and I didn't get my Peloton bike because there was a pandemic. I got it a long time ago because it was perfect, fit my life. I have been on possibly the worst customer service experience with Peloton, trying to remove pedals from my bike. So I have been subjected to tardiness. I have been subjected to nobody answering the telephone. I have kind of given up to some of the COVID pandemic pieces. I have been mansplained on several occasions, which was particularly interesting when some young dude was telling me that, no, you need a wrench. I'm like, it's an Allen key. No, it's not an Allen key. I'm like, dude, honestly, trust me, it's an Allen key. Anyway, so Peloton finally show up. I can't get the pedals off my bike, and they recalled them, by the way. I had to change them because of Peloton. It's a litany of horrible customer service. And there were never, talk about intersection, there was no intersection, right? There were no links. There was nothing in the chain where somebody knew that somebody else had done this and somebody else had done this. So we're finally there by then when we fixed it. But I think the bigger point, Joseph, and I hope that somebody from Peloton is listening to this, is fix it. because they're at an interesting stage, right, in the growth of the company where the demand is outstripping supply. And that's a dangerous place to be if you start to massively lose the customers that you already have, because you can't maintain any degree of customer service and you don't have the operational capabilities to back it up any longer. I just think that's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we were discussing actually before that again. It's a trifecta of intersections. It's the incredible community, the shared one, which is sublime. There's a product or an innovation one, which again is insanely awesome. You're in your basement or your spare room, and you may as well be at the gym. But the third one, which is so often overlooked, is that which is customer experience, and the ability to take care of those customers. And it boggled my mind. It's not just a Peloton thing. It boggled my mind at the beginning of the pandemic. It boggles my mind now that when people could have lent into investing in human beings that so desperately needed the work. These could be corporate executives that were furloughed saying, listen, I'll work on the call center, I'll respond to tweets if it means just keeping busy and, preventing myself from going crazy. And yet we didn't see companies be able to just recognize now more than ever how important it was. And it's a missed opportunity.
I think it speaks to flexibility, right, too, and lack of flexibility and certain ways of working, and nobody really kind of rethinking it and being more flexible. I mean, the other pool of talent that's been out there doing nothing, we have a 21-year-old who was literally not at college for a year, almost a year. So 6 weeks, less than a year, third year of university, and not able to go and desperate for something to do. So again, I think it goes back to, do we continue as we emerge from this? Do we continue with these old kind of constructs, which is, this is how I hire, this is how I deliver a presentation, this is how I show up today, this is what work looks like? Or do we really sit back a while? Can we hang out for a bit? I'd love to hang out with some other people in this sort of liminal space and try and figure out how it feels different going forward, and that we don't just start to kind of plug back into the old things that weren't really working for us before this happened. And I wish it hadn't happened this way, but it has. So it would be great to find a silver lining from it, I think, and emerge with some new thinking and new ways of working, new flexibility, new embracing of individual authenticity, and kind of letting people do it their way a bit more.
Well,
I'm
now
not sure corporate America's ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's going to have to be. But the good thing, I guess, is now you have the pedals sorted out. You've put pedal to the metal, and it's only good news, right? Because now, I mean, just to take the image to the extreme nth degree, because now I can say to people, follow me on Peloton, Jaffe Juice on Peloton, Tracy. I'm going to be. Can you imagine you and I doing a class together with video chat enabled? We'll stop there because of all the ridiculous common themes. But I do look forward to one day seeing you in my class
tomorrow morning, Joe. Tomorrow morning, Joseph.
Yeah, which is it a live class? All right, I'll contact you afterwards. This has been a delightful time together, and as we said before, good things come to those who wait. We had to postpone once, but I'm glad we were able to do it. I'm thrilled that Diane introduced us. Tracy Lovatt is the founder and CEO of Batten and Company, a female company that is able to consummately uncomplicate things and tell you things as they are and things that you need to hear. You can follow Batten and Company on Twitter. You can connect with Tracy on LinkedIn, and of course, find out more about the company at batten-company.com. No exclamation points. Tracy, before we go to the Zoom after show, your Corona question this week is just describe a good day in your life.
Happy people around me, waking up having slept, sunshine, and the opportunity to walk the dog and cook a good meal and hang out with the people I love and love them hard. That's a good day in my life.
That sounds like a consummate uncomplication of life. Adam Zan says, excellent chat and no overt nudity, which is a bonus. Let's head on over to the Zoom after show. And if you'd like to join Tracy and myself, all you have to do is type in bit.ly/Corona TV after show. Nothing more to say except for Chuck Norris to, of course, have the final word.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. See you guys tomorrow for our community episode. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV after show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.